Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Acosta Show. It is Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, if you're not keeping track. Hoping you're wearing your green out there. Michael, I don't see the green. I've got my green on.
I'm wearing green underwear, but
There, okay, very good.
I'm not going to do what so many people are going to ask. Let's see.
But no, it's not that kind of show. We haven't started the OnlyFans account yet, Michael, but my mom checked in with me to make sure I was wearing my green. So here you go. I could go for a green beer, depending on how this show goes, certainly based on what's happening in the news. And perhaps folks out there are turning a pale shade of green based on what's taking place in the news, feeling a bit queasy about Trump's latest attempts to trample all over the Constitution. Michael, as you see, is on the program, part of Michael Monday, where we go over all of the day's news. Later on, I'm going to speak with Liz Oyer. She was a pardon attorney at the Department of Justice who was fired by the Trump administration. Liz has some thoughts on what we've all been witnessing over the past couple of months. But, Michael, I wanted to start first with Trump wanting to undo these previous presidential pardons from Joe Biden, and it's based on his latest conspiracy theory, the Biden auto pen. The New York Times reporting that Trump wrote on social media last night that he no longer considered valid the pardons his predecessor granted to members of the bipartisan House committee that investigated the January 6th attacks on the Capitol. I mean, Michael, you and I have seen these kinds of tweets before. I'm going to read what he said on Truth Social. He goes, "The pardons that sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs are void, vacant, and of no further force or effect." He's just making this stuff up.
Well, is he, or is he taking the position that
Yeah.
King Donald, have so decreed that whatever the previous administration has done, I now deem null and void? Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that every president has the power of the pardon. It is the one
Yep.
unchecked power that is given to a president for any federal crimes to provide a pardon.
But does it give you the power to undo pardons?
In court?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I have a few questions to ask.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, as a former litigator, and so on, my questions I would ask is, what documentation, what evidence do you have that demonstrates that Joe Biden did not accept or acknowledge these pardons? That Joe Biden did not say, "I, as President of the United States, do hereby declare this individual pardoned"?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what is it? It's one thing for me to say Jim Acosta is an alien, right? And I don't mean one from a foreign country.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, from Krypton.
Outer space. Yeah.
From Krypton, because you have that Superman vibe going today.
I appreciate that. If I take the glasses off, it's
oh my God, it's Kal-El, right?
There we go. Let's go.
Right. Oh, Clark Kent, Kal-El.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
if only I can fly really fast and spin the world backwards to make things go back in time, I would use that power, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
I would thank you immensely for it. Let me be clear. There is no evidence, documentary or otherwise, other than the fact that I think it, therefore it is, right? Is it any different when he said that he could declassify documents based upon thinking it?
That's right.
It's more than just your thoughts. And I'm saddened, to be honest, because it's so reckless in a comment, it's so reckless in a post, it's so reckless for even him to make a statement that he is now going to undo all of these acts by Joe Biden because he used an auto pen. I'm not so sure that the use of an auto pen negates the fact that it's legitimate.
Well, and I was just going to say, this is according to the New York Times, and I know this because I've looked at this before. There is no power in the Constitution or case law to undo a pardon, and there's no exception to pardons signed by auto pen. Auto pens have been used going back to the Obama administration, I believe, 2011. And obviously it's something that is used by presidents because they can't sign every document that goes across their desk.
It's used by everyone. In 1987, I worked for Congressman Joe Moakley of Massachusetts.
Yep.
All right. And we used an auto pen in order to sign many letters that were going out to constituents that were curious about some CR, some requisition bill or whatever. Hey, I have a question. We would, of course, respond appropriately after looking up the
Yeah.
bill. And then we would put it into the machine. It would auto pen sign it, and
Yeah.
off we would send it. Right? What does that mean? That they're not responsive? That they're
Right.
illegal? They're not. Auto
It's
pens are
insane.
used all the time.
Well, and it raises lots of, I mean, different questions. One is, I mean, he did try to use a Sharpie that one time to change the path of that hurricane. He signs Bibles with Sharpies. I mean, we can get into his pen use if we wanted to do that. But the other thing that is disturbing about this, Michael, is it is again an indication he wants to go after his political enemies. He's trying to figure out ways to do this. And the fact that he was up at 12:35 in the morning, you remember these days, Michael, when you worked for him. When he's up late at night or in the middle of the night putting out these screeds, nothing good comes from that.
Well, let me say that I'm somewhat thankful because I was fast asleep at 12:35
That's good.
last night. I generally
Yeah.
go to sleep around midnight and get
Yeah.
up at 4:30. Had I still been in that inner circle, I'm 100% certain he would have called me to read it to me. And in some respects, I wish to God that I was still in the inner circle
Yeah.
because I would
Yeah.
say to him, boss, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It's absolutely improper. It's unconstitutional. It's insane. As
Yeah.
a post, it just lacks seriousness. It lacks an understanding
Yeah.
of either constitutional law or process.
Yeah. Well, and I wrote a Substack about this. I mean, there are obviously lots of disturbing questions about the things that he does, but it also just kind of boils down to whining. He's just whining about Biden pardoning these people before he left office, just like he was whining at the Department of Justice
Well, you call it
last Friday.
whining. You call
Yeah.
it whining.
Yeah.
He's just spelling winning differently.
Well, that's true. It's true. But it's just a nonstop, like listening to a toddler. But Michael, you wrote about his speech at the Department of Justice, which was also both annoying and disturbing. He talks about people like Norm Eisen. He talks about people like Alvin Bragg and Jack Smith. And he still talks about firing James Comey, which happened, what was it, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? My God. All of these people are living rent free in his head.
Yeah, well, I did. I put out my own Substack on
Yeah.
it first thing this morning because I found it extremely troubling.
Yeah.
There, I have from the rooftop on your show, your previous show. I
Yeah.
have done it on this show. I have
Yeah.
been doing it now for almost 4.5, 5 years, give or take, where I have been beseeching people to please listen.
Yeah.
Listen to what I'm trying to say, not because I have some sort of um, uh, I have some knowledge which I've gotten
You have
by
insights.
osmosis and so on.
Yeah.
I lived it,
Yep.
and I am only speaking from experience.
Right.
When Bill Barr unconstitutionally had me removed from my federal location monitoring agreement program and reincarcerated, put back into solitary confinement,
Yeah.
making it a total of 51 days of abuse and torture. And torture.
Terrible.
They handcuffed and
Terrible.
shackled me. They put me into a
That's
freezer.
sick.
They then sent me
That's
up.
sick.
And I mean, it's
It's
beyond.
sick.
I told everybody the reason that I fight, the easiest thing for me to do would be to do nothing.
Yeah.
Disappear, go do something, move out of the country, go do something.
Yeah.
But my fear was that what they did to me, they will do to you. And I
Yeah.
don't want to see any other American.
That's what he wants to do. But that's what he wants
It's
to
what he
do.
intends to do.
He wants to give Liz Cheney. He wants to give Adam Kinzinger. He wants to give Alvin Bragg and Jim Comey. He wants to give them the Michael Cohen treatment.
And worse,
Full
he
stop.
talks about Liz Cheney before a firing
Well, that's true.
squad. I
Yeah.
mean, come on. Look, you have to understand, I know Trump, again, since 2005. It's 20 years now. I was
Yeah.
in the inner sanctum. I was part of his life for just about 15 years.
Yeah.
This is not the Trump that I knew. This is a completely unhinged, a completely radicalized Donald J. Trump.
He's an
And
extremist. He is a
yes, and
full-blown
I
extremist.
believe,
No
yes,
question.
and Jim, I
That's
believe
right.
that the extremist position is a result of Project 2025 and
Yep.
these enablers that are now surrounding him. And I
That's right.
don't know why
Well,
he's doing it.
and perfect example is Stephen Miller, who you know well from back in the day. And I mean, this is a manifestation of keeping Stephen Miller around for so long. Over the weekend, the Trump administration transferred more than 200 immigrants to El Salvador. These are the Venezuelan migrants that have been in the news lately. Even in the face of a judge saying, "No, you cannot do this." The judge said you cannot use the what is it, the Alien Enemies Act of the 18th century to deport anyone in custody. And the judges said you have to knock it off, and they did it anyway. So, Michael, it seems to me he's trying to put his administration on a collision course with the courts, defy the
But,
courts, and then see what happens after that.
Jim, let me put it to you this way.
Yeah,
I've also warned all of the viewers, I've warned America, when Donald Trump says that he intends to destroy our tripartite system of government, he
mhm,
intends to strip the legislative branch and the
yeah,
judiciary of their co equal powers
right,
conferred to them, right, by the Constitution, and confer all power to the executive
yeah,
branch, namely himself. This is
yeah,
what he's doing. Now, remember one thing, too. Trump is not what people want to constantly say. We have to sort of stop with let's just call it the Republican name calling. Donald
yeah,
Trump is not stupid, not by any stretch of the imagination.
correct.
They already came up with a scenario on how they're going to sort of kick the judiciary in the teeth, whereas not knocking them out, but just hurting them. He said that the plane was already in the air and
Right.
that the judge had made the ruling orally and not in writing.
Yeah,
Well, in order to be effective, it does need to be in writing. It should have been in writing. The
sure.
judge took his sweet ass time and Trump took advantage of it. How
Yep.
many more times are we going to see things like this happen? Delay, delay, delay,
Well,
and
that's
onward.
true. And they play the justice system like a violin, like a fiddle. We saw that with his criminal cases, and they're going to do it again with this stuff. But it just seems to me that yes, they took advantage of a loophole and so on. But I mean, look what Caroline Levitt said at the White House briefing today. She was mocking all of this and defended a video that was posted by the White House on social media, showing these immigrants in handcuffs to the song "Closing Time" by Semisonic. I mean, what the hell's going on over there? They're enjoying this. Stephen Miller's
Everything,
enjoying this. They're all enjoying this.
yeah, everything with Trump, and everybody should know this already. You don't
Yeah.
need Michael Cohen or Jim Acosta to
Yeah.
turn around to tell you, though I do have to say, I thoroughly enjoy your Substack. I hope you enjoy mine as well, because we
Likewise.
spend a lot of time on this. This is
Yeah.
all performative art.
Yeah.
Here's what Trump has learned. We are
Yeah.
living in a Kardashian country. We are living in a world right now, especially this country, where reality television
Yep.
far exceeds numbers of that of even like 60 Minutes or serious news shows.
Sure.
People like reality television, and there is nobody better at bringing you reality stupidity, reality nonsense, reality
Yeah.
bullshit than this administration.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, they're the kings of bullshit. I mean, there's just no question. I mean, when he calls himself the king, he is the king. He's the king of bullshit, and he proves that on a daily basis. Michael, you and I were texting about this over the weekend. We wanted to get into this. I'm calling this good luck Chuck because Chuck Schumer appears to be in a big world of hurt right now. Let's talk about the Democrats a little bit. We've been talking about Donald Trump for
Yeah.
the first 15 minutes. Apparently, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, is postponing several planned events, according to the AP, this week to promote his new book, Anti Semitism in America, a Warning, which I'm sure is a very important book. But Chuck Schumer is in a world of hurt right now because he compromised with the Republicans, got that CR through the Senate, and which has been, lambasted by progressives as a giveaway to Elon Musk and Donald Trump to continue doing what they've been doing, which is ripping the federal government to shreds. And a lot of Democrats are telling me privately and some are starting to say it publicly. They want Chuck Schumer to go. What are your thoughts?
Fuck Chuck. That's the only thing that I could possibly say. When I
Okay.
saw him do that, Jim,
Yeah.
right? I'm glad that I'm not on, either cable news or,
Yeah.
one of the mainstream
We
media.
we can say this here on sub.
And I
Yeah.
say that, as somebody who has historically been okay with
Yeah.
Schumer. All right.
Yeah. Maybe replace
Imagine.
Chuck might be a nicer way to put it, but well,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You're a New Yorker. I'm will. Yeah. Go
I'm
ahead.
willing to change that. I shouldn't have done it. My mom will probably yell at me at this
Maybe
point.
Chuck. I don't know, something like
Right?
that. But
Something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. But here's the thing. He gave away the one power without even a fight. I did another Substack, I think on Saturday on this. He gave
yeah,
up the only power that the Democrats had within which to stop this Republican barrage on
yeah,
our rights and just abusing the system. He gave it up without even a fight. And
yeah,
that's exactly why Kamala Harris lost. It's exactly why Biden was getting crushed. It's why the
yeah.
Democrats right now are losing
Yes,
numbers
yes,
of people. It's why
yes.
8% of
That's
the
correct.
black community walked away from the Democratic Party. It's why now, another 18% of the Hispanic community, they want somebody that's going to get up and fight for them.
Right.
Show a little life in you. Show that you really are out there protecting us, even though they know what Trump is doing, even though
Yeah.
they know that what he's saying is harmful, even to their own self-interest. They don't care. At least he's there. At least he's alive. At least he's fighting. Everybody wants a fighter,
That's
right?
right.
And we have walked that down like some dead alley, just an alley, and we're just sitting there
Yeah.
saying, "Well, how do we get out?" Well, the answer is turn around, you putz. Turn
Yeah.
around and walk back the direction that you're in.
Yeah.
He made a drastic mistake, and shame on the other 9 Democrats that went along with him.
Yeah. And I mean, I will have to say, I don't understand the strategy at all. I mean, we can pull this apart and do it piece by piece. One piece is I don't understand the strategy at all. Why would you give Donald Trump and Elon Musk a blank check? Apparently, a CR does not have as many strings attached to it as a budget that is passed by the Congress and signed by the president. So the CR allows Donald Trump and Elon Musk to continue doing what they've been doing. And if you're Chuck Schumer and the Dems, why not say, listen, we'll keep the government up and running, but you got to come to the bargaining table, and we're going to attach some strings to what you've been doing, and no more of this nonsense of just ending, agencies and departments of the federal government until we have a full budgetary process that plays itself out. I just don't get that part of it. And then the other part of it is exactly what you said, Michael. People want the Democrats to fight. I've been calling it the Great American Pushback on my show. They're tired of this shit. They're tired of just rolling over and taking it.
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
gave him 6 months. Do you
yeah,
realize we're
yeah.
only
That's
into the
right.
game right now for
That's right.
60 days?
That's right.
We're literally
Not
in
even that.
2 months.
Yeah.
Where are we going to be in 6 months? You're
Right.
talking about violating people's First Amendment rights. You're talking about Social
Yeah.
Security, Medicare, Medicaid, where grandma and grandpa won't have money for either food and or their drugs.
Yeah.
They won't
Yeah. The
have money for
Democrats are supposed to protect Medicare. They're supposed to protect Social Security. That's what you are supposed to do if you are a
And
Democrat.
what happened to all the people who voted
That's
for
right.
Trump? I did another Substack called
Yeah.
Buyer's Remorse. To
Yeah.
all of those people who voted for Trump, the auto
Yeah.
workers unions, or or the various different unions, or the black community, the Hispanic, the Venezuelan community in Florida. Now what's happening? All of a
Yeah.
sudden, the guy's sitting there and he's saying, wait. You're deporting me, right? My
Yeah.
wife is American, my children, but you're deporting me. Yes, we are. But I
That's right.
voted for Trump. And you know what? You know what the Republicans say to him? Tough shit, Charlie. Have a nice sandwich on the way out.
That's it. No, what they're doing is they're putting out music videos with closing time on it. I mean, they're mocking. I mean, the Venezuelan community was very much a part of the Trump coalition in a lot of different places, and they're openly mocking you. They're mocking you. You voted for them, and they're mocking you. How does that feel?
Jim,
It,
did you see Scott Bessent, who turned around and made one of the most
yeah, what was
asinine
that?
comments that
Unbelievable.
the 5,000 plus people that are with us right now, that you
Yeah.
want to pay more for your goods because
Yep.
Scott Bessent says so. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know who he is and so on. Let me just tell you two things about him. First and foremost, his net worth is at somewhere about $510 million.
Yeah.
Okay? He does not understand, as any of these folks
Inflation
that
does not affect
enablers
him.
that are
Yeah.
with Trump, he doesn't
Yeah.
understand what you want. He's in a whole nother world with his house that's now on the market. It's known as the Pink Palace downtown.
Hmm.
$22.5 million. So I'm
Wow.
sure there's probably
Wow.
a handful of people here that maybe have some pretty expensive properties. Maybe your home is worth $22.5 million. Then you should get up here and you should turn around and explain to the rest of the
Yeah.
country why it is you want to pay more for your goods, that you don't want a $200, $300 large flat screen television. You
Yeah.
want it made in America at the whopping cost of $2,000, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
and
will
I
make
love that.
you happy.
And I love how he's like, oh, we don't need flat screen TV. Somebody's chiming in with that comment right now. Donald Trump does nothing but watch himself on television. He does nothing but watch himself on. Are you kidding me with that line of bullshit? And the other thing that, Michael, we have to get into, and that is the Democratic Party, people in the Democratic Party, people who are outside the Democratic Party who might be tempted to go with the Democrat, they just want fresh blood. They want fresh faces. They want some fresh legs in there. And I'm sorry, the Chuck Schumer is just he's just not that. And it just seems to me the Democratic Party is missing a huge opportunity right now.
Yeah, let
Massive.
me say the problem with people like Chuck Schumer and
Yeah.
so many others, including, if my wife will give me the thumbs up, I will. I will. I am so into it. I want to run
Let's do it.
against Jerry Nadler in the
Interesting.
primary. I
Okay.
absolutely want to. If my wife will give me the thumbs up, we've had some major arguments over it. She doesn't want me anywhere near politics
Why?
for obvious reasons, right? Look over my shoulder, right?
Yeah.
I want to. Why? And let me tell you why.
Why not?
I want to
Yeah.
do it because this Democratic Party needs somebody who's willing to get up and throw a chair. I'm willing to get up and to throw the guy over the mic, right? And not
Yeah.
sit down. And I'm not going to just stand up there waving a cane. Chuck Schumer is old. He's been in too long. He's
Yeah.
too complacent. He's just too complacent with the job that he's
Yeah.
doing. It's more about him sustaining what he has than doing things that, yeah, it'll shake shit up in DC. But
Yeah.
what do you think the Republican Party is doing? People say, look, let's be fair about one thing about Donald Trump here.
Yeah.
Donald Trump takes the kernel of sand, right? He takes that one piece of sand, and
Yep.
with that sand, he makes it the denominator into the whole beach. Yes, there is a weaponization of the Justice Department. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, the media, as far as I'm concerned, right, they suck. When they get their hands onto a story, they
Yeah.
run with it regardless of the truth. I once again have been victim to it about 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Let's all remember the entire story of me in Prague. I've never
Yeah.
been to the Czech Republic. I
I
never came
remember
to
that.
compromise.
Yeah, I
11
remember that.
allegations. Do you know not one person in the media retracted their story? Not one person in the media apologized for 2.5 months of every single day assaults on me, my
Yeah.
character. Trump is not wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm not willing to lose the First Amendment over Trump's belief that that one piece of sand is the beach. And that,
Yeah.
my friends, is the problem. And that's why you need somebody like me. I just keep standing up and screaming from the rooftop. People say, stop
Yep.
yelling. You're too passionate. You're going to have a heart attack. Don't worry about me and my heart. I have to do it to get through to people. And
Yeah.
I said, not just on this show here, but with you in past and so on, my biggest fear is that what Donald Trump and Bill Barr and that weaponized Department of Justice did to me, my biggest fear is that they will do it to you. And you know
That's right.
what? The chicken's coming home to roost.
Yeah. Well, I think it sounds like to me, if we can get Mrs. Cohen on board, it sounds like you're there. It sounds like
You
you
may
got the
have to call
fire
her.
in your belly. I might have to. I'll put in a call. I'll write a letter. Whatever it takes. But I mean, Michael, I mean, it seems to me you want to do it, and but that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you got to have fresh faces in this party, or else it's just not gonna make it. And it's about something important, Michael. And I think you and I are both on board with this at the same time, and that is there's too much at stake. The American way of life, the way of life that you and I were about the same age, the way we grew up in this country, it's all
I
at
think
risk
I'm
right
older than
now.
you, Jim.
Maybe a little bit, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit. But it's all at risk right now. And
Jim,
you've
you
got
know what's at risk? You know what's at risk, my friend? You're at risk.
yeah,
Legitimate journalists that say things that Donald Trump doesn't like. That
yeah,
all of a sudden, whether it's illegal protests or his now decision he wants to change libel, defamation laws in
yes.
this country within which to go after individuals or whole companies simply
Well,
because they are promoting a an ideology or they don't agree with his policy and they
yeah.
take a contrarian view.
Well, he goes after the Associated Press. He goes after the White House press corps. Now they're going after Voice of America, which is near and dear to my heart. And the New York Times wrote about this. For more than 80 years, Voice of America transmitted the news into countries, many of them authoritarian, where reliable sources of information about the outside world were often hard to come by. He signed this executive order. They've been dismantling Voice of America over the last couple of days, laying off all these journalists and so on. Listen to this. This is the kicker. With most of Voice of America's workforce locked out, at least some of its radio frequencies in Asia, the Middle East, and elsewhere went dark or began airing nothing but music, according to employees over the weekend. That is what is being sent out by the United States of America. We are supposed to be the beacon of freedom, of democracy in this world. And the Voice of America, because of the whims of the president, is now putting out music, is putting out Muzak.
Jim,
It's
it's
absolute bullshit.
when I watched Keir Starmer, the premier there in the UK,
Yeah.
when I watched Keir Starmer turn around and make a plea to the other EU countries about ensuring Ukraine has proper support, both militarily as well as intelligence. And I kept saying to myself, that is supposed to be Donald Trump
Yeah.
up there making that statement. That's
Yep.
not supposed to be Keir Starmer. That's not supposed to be anybody else. That's supposed to be the president of the United States of
Correct.
America, whether you like the guy or you don't. He's supposed to be up there as the beacon of democracy in the world, as
That's
the
right.
leader of the free world, talking about how we are going to protect our allies, that we are going to
That's right.
ensure that Putin, an adversary of America, will not take control, will
Yeah.
not continue this unjustified war against Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, will not then make a hard right turn into Poland and then try to take over the Baltics as
Right.
well in order to reorganize the former Soviet Union, the USSR. No, 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 and no. And what did we get? We got Trump winning a golf championship at one of his golf courses in Florida.
Unreal. Yeah. Well, he says he won. They say he won. I mean, we have to be careful because, it is his club. It is his tournament. I saw some video. Perhaps it was not correct video. I don't know. It looked like it was video from over the weekend, but it looked like he shanked one off in the woods. When you shank one off into the woods, you don't typically come down with the trophy at the end, at the end of the round. But that, I don't know
You
that.
do it. You do if it's your club, and I can't wait. Just imagine at the dinner where
Yeah.
he, as the president and the owner of the club,
Yeah.
purchased for himself yet another trophy and stands
Yeah.
up and says,
Oh
I
boy.
would like to thank myself for providing myself with this award. It's an honor, right? For me to
Yes.
have
Here's
won
the
the
trophy.
club championship for the
Yes.
30th time. I
We
hold
did
more
it.
club
We
champs,
did it, Michael.
right? We sure did it.
We did it. Yeah, here's the trophy. I got it right here. Oh wait, it's a candlestick. Yes, and they can put the trophy right next to the fake Time magazine. And was it? I've been to some of these clubs where I suppose there's a legitimate Time magazine with him on it here and there. Yes, but there are some that you can tell this is a ginned up Sports Illustrated
Look,
or
let me
Tiger
say
Beat or
this though.
whatever it is.
All right, so let me just say this. He happens to be a good golfer.
Yeah,
I've seen him legitimately play. He's
sure.
probably a 4 handicap. All right. And that's an excellent, excellent golfer. But you
Yeah,
have people that play at the club who I know personally. I know them personally who are scratch players, meaning that
yeah,
they score a 0. And the chance that a scratch player is going to, on a regular basis, lose to somebody who's a +4, it's
yeah.
very, very rare,
Not
right?
likely.
Unless, of course, the guy happens to own the club and you don't want to get thrown out. And so instead of, if you're up by 2, well, you 5 putt.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the caddy says, hey, maybe take this one for the team here and knock that one off into the woods or miss the 2-foot putt so the
Yeah, why
dear
don't you
leader
shank
can
it? Why
come
don't
home
you
with the
just go
trophy.
shank it in the water?
Michael, it's always so much fun to chat with you. Great Michael Monday as always. You can't make this stuff up,
You can't.
you
It's it's
know.
it's sad that this is where our country is at right now.
Yeah,
We're better than this. In
yeah.
fact, wouldn't we all just like to wake up tomorrow without a post, without the chaos, without the fighting? Where
Folks had
like
that
today,
chance.
I was
Yeah,
walking on Fifth Avenue where they have the St. Patty's Day parade, and I got to tell you, there
yeah,
are a lot of Irish MAGA supporters, right?
yeah.
They just are, despite the fact that Trump's policies are hurting them. And I didn't want to start getting into conversations with people. Some people wanted to take pictures of me as I'm walking, others wanted to kill me. It's not right. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up and then just all be Americans again,
It
right?
would be
Let's
great.
try it for one day.
Yeah,
Just
all
one
of
day.
us, not just
All of
one
us.
side, all of us. That's what it's all
Just try
about.
it for
Exactly.
one day and
I
see
agree.
how nice it is so that we can try it again the day after, and then
Yeah,
maybe the day after, and maybe the day after. Hey, by the way,
yeah,
one last
yeah,
thing. Why
yeah,
don't you ask this young lady, Oyer, who's coming on your show right after,
yeah.
why they didn't approve my pardon application
I'll ask.
after I had 7 historical figures writing
Yeah,
letters, right, justifying why I was
yeah,
entitled to it. And why
yeah.
did Biden give it only to his family and not to other people who
Well,
actually
that's a
put
good
their asses
question.
on the line?
Yeah, and I'll ask that, and just so you know, in the Acosta administration, Michael will get one of the first pardons. So that's how it's going to work there.
And
So,
vice versa, Jim.
and if I fly around the planet like Superman backwards, or is that the other way?
Either way.
We can also
Either way
reverse
works for
the
me, my friend.
conviction.
Jim, thank you, brother.
Good to see you,
Thanks,
buddy.
everybody.
All right, thanks a lot, Michael. Take
Always.
care. Michael Cohen, another edition of Michael Monday. I mean, honestly, it's a great way to start the week. Michael and I get through a lot of what's happening out there, which is obviously terrific to be able to do that. And oh boy, I'm trying to bring in Liz Oyer now, and I typed in Liz Oyer, and then it autocorrected to something else. So there she is. Okay, let's add Liz Oyer into the mix. And I'm seeing some people chime in and saying Acosta Cohen 2028. I mean, there are crazier ideas out there. Let's just do a podcast first. Let's do a clean podcast and get through the clean podcast on the St. Patrick's Day. Hoping for a little luck of the Irish here so I can get Liz Oyer in here. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Jim. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I must have the luck of the Irish. My mom was right. If I wore green, good things would happen today, and it's
Oh
great to
man,
have
I
you on.
I forgot my green, but I'm happy to be here and
That's
feeling good anyway.
okay. That's great to see you. And I just want to tell folks, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, but you are a former pardon attorney at the Department of Justice. That was your job at the Department of Justice. Did you have other jobs prior to that? And tell us a little bit about how you got to be here today and what's been happening to you over the last few weeks. I know you were shown the door by the Trump administration. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I have been at the Department of Justice for 3 years, but I
Mm,
actually spent a large part of my career prior to that as a defense attorney, including 10
mm,
years spent as a federal public defender. And what I will say that is just so alarming to me about what's going on with the justice system right now, as somebody who's been both at DOJ and a defense attorney, is that Trump is really attacking it from both directions. He is
yeah,
waging a um, a multifaceted war on the rule of law.
Yeah.
And he is, at the same time as he's attacking the Department of Justice, he is also kneecapping the defense bar in a way that makes it a really scary time to be someone who is caught up in a prosecution.
So tell us a little bit about your departure from the Department of Justice, because I was reading what you wrote in Rolling Stone, where you said essentially one of Trump's defense lawyers, who now has a very high level position at the Department of Justice, which is a commentary in and of itself of what's going on over there, essentially sent security over to you to remove you from the Department of Justice, and then proceeded to say things about you that were not true.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my role as pardon attorney is a non-political appointment.
Yeah.
It's a job essentially that is intended to ensure that people who do not have political power, who don't have connections, who don't have access to the White House through the front door, can be considered for the same benefit of clemency as those who have those personal relationships with the president. And my strong hope was that I would be able to continue that work into this administration, and that there
Yeah.
would be a place for ordinary people who have very strong cases for second chances through clemency could also be considered. That obviously didn't happen. I was tasked with participating in a working group related to restoring gun rights, which is not something that typically the office had a role in.
Interesting.
And I was asked specifically to provide a recommendation to the attorney general that she restore the gun rights of the actor Mel Gibson. And it was explained to me that he has a personal relationship with the president, and that I shouldn't need to know
Wow.
very much more about him to be able to make that recommendation to the attorney general. There is a statute under which the attorney general has the authority to restore firearm rights to individuals who've been disenfranchised by having a criminal conviction. So, of course, she can go ahead and do that without my recommendation. But what
Yeah.
was interesting about this situation is that it was important to the staff of the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, to Todd Blanche's staff, that I make that recommendation to the
Mm.
Attorney General, which seems to suggest that there is a desire to identify career employees in the department who can give a veneer of legitimacy to political
Mhm.
decisions by making recommendations. Or it's similar in some ways to the Eric Adams case, in which they're scouring the earth trying to find a career prosecutor who will dismiss the case,
Yeah.
because it's important to the legitimacy of the action that is undertaken in the ordinary course, even
Yeah.
though the purpose of it is blatantly political in nature.
And so, and was it also a bit of a litmus test that was being applied to you to some extent too? Let's see who'll play
Certainly
ball
seems
with
so.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it certainly seemed like it was a litmus test. It seems like, in the department right now, and anything you say, anything you're asked to do, how you respond to it, how quickly you respond, whether you ask questions, it's all everyone is being evaluated.
Yeah. Well, there are so many things in the news, and it's perfect that you were on the program for today. I'm no genius. I didn't make it this way. We booked you last week, but then we saw Trump's speech at the Justice Department, which obviously those kinds of speeches don't come very often. A president goes over there to deliver a speech at the Justice Department to make a point, I guess reach for a higher narrative, to sort of tell the story of America in some way, shape, or form, whether it's going after terrorism, where you name it. But it seemed in this case, it was Trump trying to continue to advance this idea that he's going to seek retribution as president, and he's going to use the Justice Department to do it. He was talking about people like James Comey and so on. What was your takeaway when you saw the speech that he delivered over at the Justice Department?
I think really the most disturbing feature of the speech was that Trump came into the Department of Justice and announced that he is the chief law enforcement officer in this
Yeah,
country.
yeah,
Now, that's the attorney general's job. The
right.
attorney general is the chief law enforcement officer, and him coming into that building, being introduced by Pam Bondi, and then making that declaration on her stage in her building essentially underscores how weak she is as an
It's
attorney
a good point.
general, and the
Yeah,
lengths that the president is going to fill the Department of Justice with people who are essentially puppet leaders. He is
Mm,
the person who's calling the shots. He's the person who is setting the agenda for the Department of Justice. And Pam Bondi is really just there to carry out his orders. She said something to that effect in her introduction, that she was there to, everyone is there to fulfill the president's directives. They have underscored to the career workforce, the leaders of the Department of Justice, that we are all President Trump's lawyers. And,
right.
most of them, in fact, have worked as President Trump's lawyers. So that's really an alarming new direction for the Department of Justice.
Mm,
Pam Bondi did not, during the time I was there, ever introduce herself to the career workforce. She did not
wow.
give her own speech in which she set priorities for the department. And she's now demonstrated that she is somebody who is not going to be independent and is not going to stand up to the president. One of the things that's really interesting about this situation with Mel Gibson and his gun rights is
Yeah.
she is somebody who is on record saying that a formative experience of her career was prosecuting domestic violence misdemeanors. She talked
Interesting.
about a case. She gave a speech about a case in which she represented a domestic violence victim who was murdered with a gun by her abuser. She's somebody who's on record as saying that she believes that people with domestic violence histories, are dangerous,
They
and
shouldn't
that
get guns.
protection is
Yeah.
needed. So,
Yeah.
it's just such a staggering turnaround for her. And I think it demonstrates that she is letting the president dictate the agenda. She has no agenda of her own. The president is in charge of the Department of Justice, which is just incredibly alarming,
Yeah.
given all the tools and powers that that institution possesses.
And I talk about this on my show all the time. It's just contrary to the American way of life. It is not the norm, whether you're talking about Republican presidents or Democratic presidents in this country, for the president of the United States to consider himself the chief law enforcement officer of this country. And Liz, given your experience dealing with presidential pardons, I'm just curious. I'm sure you saw this in the news, not to ask you 20 questions about what's in the news, but Trump making this assertion on his social media account that Biden's pardons that were issued at the end of his administration are somehow invalid because he used an auto pen. I guess, can you fact check that for us?
So, Jim, I wasn't working inside the White House, so I have no knowledge of how those pardons were signed
Gotcha.
or any of that. And I
Yeah.
also,
And we don't
my
even know if
job as
that's
pardon
true. Good
attorney.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So my job as pardon attorney was really not to weigh in on the, I will call them political pardons. I think that is a
Yeah.
political pardon. I was not consulted on that. I did not have any role in that particular pardon.
Mm,
My job, as I mentioned earlier, is really to ensure that people who don't have those political connections can also be considered in the pardon process. But what
mm,
I will say is, we can have a legitimate debate about whether you should be able to issue a preemptive pardon as president. We could have a legitimate debate about whether the president should have the authority to pardon friends and family members. There are a lot of legitimate questions about the scope of the presidential pardon power as it exists. But the fact is that currently the president does have that power. And once the president makes that decision, it cannot be undone by a subsequent president.
yeah.
There's no precedent for that. And there's no basis in law for that. That is just this president coming in and grabbing for another lever of power.
Yeah. So when Trump says I declare this void, he's just saying something into the wind here. It has no effect. It has no legal effect.
He is just a bully whose actions have largely gone unchecked. And I
Yeah.
think he's testing limits, seeing, will anyone check me on this if I just declare that these are void? It's very alarming that he is so thoroughly infiltrating the Department of Justice, filling it with his political loyalists,
Yeah.
undermining the defense function by targeting defense attorneys who are willing to take on cases of people who he doesn't like. And he's also gone to great lengths to remove ethical guardrails within the Department of Justice to essentially ensure that he can do as he pleases. And it's
Yeah.
very scary to think about who's going to be left to check any of this at the end of the day. I think the pardon issue is really just another example of another lever of power that he's trying to grab onto.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, he's making a case for those Biden pardons for the January 6th committee because Trump is making it clear in that social media post that he still wants to go after those people. What is your view of the pardon power? Is it to broad when it comes to what the president can do with the pardon power. It seems to me it's really out of control, and I'm just curious what your take is on it, having been in that area of the Justice Department.
So I came into the role of pardon attorney having spent 10 years as a federal public defender. And you've got very few tools in your toolkit as a public defender. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of groveling, there's a lot
yeah,
of begging, there's a lot of pleading to try to get an outcome that feels fair for a
yeah,
client. So I was in awe of the pardon power because it's just this unbelievable tool to correct injustices with literally the stroke of a
yes,
pen.
yeah,
I was coming at it from that perspective, thinking this could do so much good for so many people. And we've seen times when it has. President Obama's clemency initiative is a
yeah,
great example of
yeah,
using the pardon power to really benefit a lot of very deserving people. Since then, there have been uses of the pardon power that have rightly caused people to question whether it should be as broad as it is, whether it's
yeah,
being used appropriately. I will say that the function of the Office of the Pardon Attorney is even more important in those times because there has to be a path for that relief for individuals who don't have political access and connections. But there are legitimate questions that have been raised about whether the power is too broad. I will
yeah,
say that if the power were eliminated, it would be very damaging to a lot of people who have no other paths forward to get second chances. We have many people in this country who are serving overly lengthy sentences of imprisonment for drug offenses pursuant to mandatory minimums, for example. And clemency is a remedy that can be very
yeah.
well used to help those individuals.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question about it. I remember when Obama did it. Biden obviously did it. I guess Michael Cohen was saying before you came on, he wished Biden had done it for him. What do you think of? I mean, Michael has he has a story to tell. It's tough to go through these individual cases. Did you ever run across? Can you? I don't. Maybe you can't speak to it. Did you ever run across the Michael Cohen case?
You know,
If you don't mind me asking that question.
So I generally don't talk about individual cases that
Sure.
may or may not have come before me. But what I will say about that is,
Yeah.
um, his case is a good example of many people do not understand how harsh the criminal justice system can be and how
Yeah.
unfair it can seem until they find themselves in the middle of it. That has
So true.
been the case for many people who have come to see the criminal justice system differently after they've been affected by it personally. Some of
Good
those
point.
people go on to advocate for reforms that are broadly beneficial to others, and some people really can't see past their own circumstances. I
Yeah.
would say that President Trump is maybe in that latter camp where he is feeling aggrieved by how he was treated, and he
Right.
is not able to see more broadly that the criminal justice system is harsh sometimes. He's really only able to focus on how unfairly he feels that he was treated, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
Yeah. No, there's no question about it, and forgive me for putting you on the spot like that. But the one thing I did want to ask you about, and again, if this goes outside your wheelhouse, let me know. But the Trump administration defying a judge's order when it comes to those deportations of the Venezuelan alleged gang members. It just seems to me that what Trump is trying to do is put his administration on a collision course with the courts to sort of dare them, play chicken, and see what they will do if he defies their orders. Have you been observing that? What have been your thoughts on this? Because to me, this might be the most chilling thing that's happening out there. I mean, just about over and above anything else that's happening in the news right now. If the executive branch, if the White House can just thumb its nose at the courts in this country, then you have to ask the question: what can the White House do in defiance of court orders, and where does it stop?
Yeah, it's very alarming. I will say that the courts seem more important than ever now because they are the last line of defense against this steamroll. The president appears
Yes.
to be steamrolling his way over anyone who is preventing him from gaining full control over the justice system on this path toward destroying the rule of law. And the
Yeah.
courts are an important last line of defense. And I am hopeful that they will retain their ability to put some brakes on this. There are
Yeah.
some things happening within the department that I think have been little noticed, but are
Mm.
making it easier for him to do some of the things that he's doing. For example, DOJ has pretty rigorous ethics rules. There previously has always been
Right.
a career official who oversees matters of ethics and professional responsibility. There is no longer a career official overseeing those things. There are
Mm.
now members of President Trump's personal defense team, political appointees who are overseeing those functions. So essentially, they're policing themselves. All of the internal brakes are off. So the
Yeah.
external resistance is more important than ever. He is trying to diminish the ability of the defense bar to put brakes on what he's doing. And my
That's right.
hope is that he will not be able to do the same with the courts.
Yeah. Well, Liz, my hat's off to you for going out there and speaking out publicly. Not everybody has done this. I noticed a lot of comments in our chat during this conversation where people have been very appreciative of what you've done over at the Justice Department. The idea that Trump could have his defense attorneys running the Justice Department and then running off people like yourself, people who are dedicated to the work over at the Justice Department. I know there's so many other people at the Justice Department who have been going through what you've been going through. And I just can't imagine what's happening to that place right now. It is so vital. It's like part of the glue that keeps this country together, our justice system.
Yep, yep. It's
Yeah,
an incredibly important institution. And the folks who are still there, I hope that they will be able to stay and do some good. But it is an
yeah,
extremely challenging time to work inside the Department of Justice.
yeah. All right. Well, Liz Oyer, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
I hope I didn't go on too long and scare you off from coming on again, but really appreciate your time.
I enjoyed being here. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Thanks a lot. That is Liz Oyer.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Um, Justice Department attorney, former Justice Department attorney who worked inside the pardon office, had a lot of insights as to a lot of stuff going on in the news today. I do want to wrap up the show with a couple of items. I mean, again, I've done this in the past. I'm going to do it again here at the end of this program. I'm going to dip into what I call the Dear Leader files. This is, recurring segment, not every day. But this is happening. It may be happening right now. Donald Trump is scheduled to tour the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington and preside over its board meeting. The move is part of Trump's takeover of the storied institution, the Washington Post reports, which has included a purge of leadership and his installation as chairman of the board. Obviously, what Liz was talking about a few moments ago about what's taking place at the Justice Department, what Michael Cohen was talking about earlier with respect to what has been taking place inside the Democratic Party and their ability to stand up to Trump. Those are the big stakes in all of this. There's no question about it. Those are the big stakes. I fully grant you, if you're going to make the point that perhaps talking about the Kennedy Center is not of the same caliber of story as those two items. But I do want to say, and perhaps this is because I'm a member of the press, I'm a broadcaster. I consider myself somebody who is a part of the arts to some extent. I have a Bachelor of Arts from my uh, alma mater, James Madison University. And the arts mean a lot to me. Um, I, I can't tell you how many times, and I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, I grew up in Northern Virginia. I've talked about this before. Can't tell you how many times I've been over to the Kennedy Center. And one of the last times I was there was to see Hamilton. I saw Hamilton at the Kennedy Center, and the people were so nice. They spotted me and they said, "Hey, come backstage, take a look around." Went backstage behind the scenes at Hamilton. And the people there just could not have been nicer human beings. I've been there for the Washington Ballet Company and their events that they have there. A very good friend of mine, Timothy Lowry, has taken me backstage over at the Kennedy Center to attend some events on behalf of the Washington Ballet. And it just it aggravates me to know, and perhaps this is the intent. The intent is to make people's blood boil inside the nation's capital, and if so, I guess mission accomplished to some extent. But the Kennedy Center is one of the crown jewels of the nation's capital. It is one of the most important um, institutions of the nation's capital. That is why it is named after President Kennedy, a real president, a real president. John F. Kennedy was a real president. That's why the Kennedy Center is named after him. And for Donald Trump to go on a tour over there and do the dear leader thing and look around, and maybe they'll take a picture of, I hope that when he goes over to the Kennedy Center, that they take a picture of Donald Trump in front of that iconic bust, that massive homage to John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Because at that moment, and I really hope they do, because at that moment, even as Trump is standing in the majestic hallways of the Kennedy Center, and somebody's asking, in a tutu, maybe, yeah, maybe in a tutu. I don't want to see those legs, honestly. That's not a good idea. Let's not go down that road. I want to see him in that setting because it will reveal how small a human being he is. For the President of the United States to dedicate any of his time to some sort of hostile takeover of the Kennedy Center only shows how small he is on the political stage. Yeah, as Michael Cohen was indicating a little while ago, we have Donald Trump for we're scheduled to have him for another 4 years. But he is on that stage in such a lonely way. He's all alone. Sure, he might have MAGA behind him. He might have the likes of Elon Musk behind him. But the people who care deeply about the arts in this country, the people who care deeply about institutions like the Kennedy Center in this country, they're not in the theater. They're certainly not standing and applauding, because on that stage, in a place called the Kennedy Center, Donald Trump could not be smaller. He does not command the stage at the Kennedy Center. It is that action in and of itself that makes him, I don't know, what do they call that? A one night wonder? One show and you're gone. He just doesn't. This is just another shining example of how he just doesn't measure up to the job. And he certainly doesn't measure up to somebody like John F. Kennedy. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Jim Acosta Show. My thoughts are with everybody over at the Kennedy Center this week. I know it must just be sickening to see what's taking place over there. And for the folks in the arts community here in Washington, just know that there are so many people behind you. There's so many people standing with you. They know how disgusting this is. They know how wrong this is. And yes, you are going through what Liz Oyer, who was on my show just a while ago, what she and the people at the Justice Department are going through. We're seeing a hostile takeover of key institutions here in Washington, D.C. There's no question about it. And there's not a whole lot that can be done about it right now. And yeah, I could have brought some jokes here. What if they called it the Trump Center and the Village People perform night after night? There's a show there at the Kennedy Center called Sheer Madness, and I suppose it is a bit of a commentary on what's happening right now, a bit of a metaphor for what's happening right. We are in the midst of sheer madness here in the nation's capital, but we're going to get through it. Mark my words, we're going to get through it. The Kennedy Center is going to get through it. The legacy of John F. Kennedy will get through it. We're all going to get through it, ladies and gentlemen. And when we do, we'll all meet back at the Kennedy Center for the return of what this institution is all about, what this nation's capital is all about, what this country is all about. Respect for human decency, respect for one another. Something he doesn't understand. Something the man who will be standing over at the Kennedy Center will never understand. But thank you once again for tuning in on this St. Patrick's Day edition of the Jim Acosta Show. A little homage to my mom's side of the family, where there are Irish roots that go back. I don't know. We did a thing on finding your roots on PBS. I still haven't talked about that on this program, but that goes back centuries in Ireland, and I need to talk about that at some. We'll do that at a different time. Fellow, just like John, not quite as Irish as John F. Kennedy, but pretty close. Well, not even close, but maybe a fraction of the Irish he brought to the table. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in today. I'll be back tomorrow, and stay tuned. Some enhancements coming to the Jim Acosta Show. Some enhancements coming to my presence here on Substack and so many other platforms. So a little tease there, but stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for watching. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. Have a good evening, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day.